We have 4 years to fundamentally transform our federal government, to cut through the bureaucracy. That's what President Trump campaigned on. 77% of the American public supports a full investigation into federal spending, and there's not a lot of time to wait. So DOGE is moving fast, but that's what President Trump wants. And again, that's what the American people want.
Ready for round two, a new mass email hitting the inboxes of federal employees asking them to answer the all-important question, what'd you actually do last week? Workers have until midnight tonight to respond. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth directing his civilian workforce to list 5 things they accomplished and, of course, CC their supervisors. And cue the pearl clutching from Washington's elite, but billionaire hedge fund founder Ray Dalio says drastic times call for drastic measures.
If you don't do it, so you're going to be in trouble. And I can't tell you exactly when it'll come. It's like a heart attack. I can't tell you exactly. You're getting closer. My guess would be 3 years, give or take a year, something like that.
I'm Brian Brenberg, along with my co-host Taylor Riggs, Lydia Hu, and Megan McDowell, Jackie DeAngelis, and our guest for the hour, Jason Chaffetz. Welcome to you, sir. Fox Business' Madison Allworth joins us from Capitol Hill with the latest on DOGE's efforts to axe waste. Madison.
Hey, Brian. Yeah, so government employees got another email this past weekend asking them to detail what they did this past week at work. You're noticing a pattern here. It appears that this is now going to become a weekly requirement to make sure that the government employees are aligned with the president and DOGE's agenda, which is to minimize waste and maximize efficiency. And more people are getting on board. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth directing the Pentagon's civilian workforce to comply with this email after initially saying, hold off.
I am now directing each member of the department's civilian workforce, just civilian, to provide those 5 bullets on what they accomplished in their specific jobs last week. It's a simple task, really, as Elon said, as the president recognized in our first cabinet meeting, just a pulse check. Are you there?
So all of this, as DOGE leader Elon Musk tells Joe Rogan, he didn't anticipate waste, fraud, and abuse within the government to be as bad as it is.
I just want to emphasize the sheer madness of the government. It's just because they have magic money computers that the checks never bounce to the federal government. So you don't have the normal corrective mechanism that you have for a company or for an individual. The checks is always clear. The net result is inflation, which is effectively a tax on everyone.
But the good and bad news is, Brian, that Musk says the government was so poorly run that it's easy to make big, meaningful changes right away. Brian?
Madison, thank you very much for that update on DOGE. Jason Chaffetz, you know more about government waste, not because you're a wasteful guy, no, just because you've worked in the thing before. The pushback on Musk has been so fierce, but they're coming back again and again with the next round of emails or the next round of cuts. This is like a rugby scrum, isn't it? Like right on they call it the line of scrimmage, and they're just like in there. Like, who's going to push who back at this point?
It's outrageous. You're going to have to list 5 things you did in a week in order to get your paycheck. Come on, this is a very reasonable, simple, easy thing to do. Let's remember, we're $36 trillion in debt. As Elon Musk pointed out, that machine over there, the so-called PAM at the Treasury, is spitting out about $1 billion every hour. And Mike Lee posted up something today, Senator Mike Lee from Utah, his discussion with Elon Musk. There's something like 4+ million credit cards, but there's only 2-something million federal employees. So what in the world is
everybody's got 2 credit cards like a Max One and then using? Is that what's going on?
They're handing them out to contractors, and so everybody should be championing this. Yeah. They're not trying to cut Medicare. They're trying to get rid of the waste, fraud, and abuse.
And Jackie, so you got Secretary Hegseth now who's saying, look, if you're a civilian in the DOD, you got to respond to the email. He has every right to do that. DOGE may have given him the idea, but he's free to do that or not. He's saying, I want in on that.
And I think there was a little confusion because we talked about it on Friday, that San Francisco judge's ruling that was talking about how the OPM, Office of Personnel Management, can't necessarily issue a directive of what happens in another agency. So OPM can fire or hire within its own agency. They can't necessarily tell Pete Hegseth what to do with the Department of Defense. But that doesn't mean that Pete Hegseth can't do whatever he wants because he's the boss there. So if he wants people to send an email with 5 points of what have they done and he wants to cut the bottom 10% like Jack Welch used to do at GE, he is within his freedom to do that. And you know what I learned at jobs throughout my life? If you like the rules, you like them. And if you don't like the rules, you can always leave. Everybody knows where the door is. So I think he's proceeding. I think everybody sort of paused for a moment to try to understand what impact that ruling would have. It doesn't really have any impact at all. They can continue doing what they need to do to keep their agencies efficient and lean.
If you run an executive agency, you should be able to execute your strategy. Right. It's part of the name. Taylor, here's one of my favorite parts of this. I think you know something about it. You've got the government workforce and the government spending. Then you got all these contractors and outside agencies that work with the government, and they spend gobs of money
Billions.
on projects that make their partners rich.
Billions.
But I don't know what America gets for it. That's going to change.
So let me make a joke. We just came off of a segment, right? We were talking about like brutal transparency with our spouses in the household. If my husband submitted an invoice to me that said consulting services, I would want a more itemized receipt.
Wait.
Let's just say that. No, but if he were, consulting services is not itemized denied. Well, guess what? That's what they're doing to the government. Ernst & Young, EY, Booz Allen, and a few others are actually meeting with Trump officials because they have, according to this number in the Wall Street Journal, in 2025, the 10 highest paid consulting firms are set to receive $65 billion, and it has not yet been allocated. I'm not saying there's fraud, waste, and abuse there, but I do want a more itemized receipt of what are these consulting services. Tell me the specifics of the project. Tell me what you're working on. Tell me how much goes to administrative fees versus the actual project. Those are all sort of things. So I like that. Again, this is a president who's engaging in the private sector because we absolutely need the private sector, but it's not just here's $65 billion this year, go have fun on consulting services. Tell me what you're doing, and then we'll allocate money appropriately.
I mean, think about how many years those guys have been doing that consulting and probably getting somewhere around $60 billion a year. And like, has the government gotten any more? I mean, these guys are supposed to make the government more efficient, right?
Yeah,
a little more effective.
Correct. Say one thing. So in private industry, any company I've ever worked for, if you want to go on a business trip or you need to do something, travel, whatever, you've got to itemize all your expenses tailored to your point in great detail.